You opened your savings account this morning and felt something close to pride. The number has been growing, slowly but growing. You have been disciplined. You have been responsible. You have done everything they told you to do. So why does it feel like you are still not getting ahead? Here's what nobody told you. Saving money is not the same as building wealth. And for millions of people, the habit they are most proud of is the exact habit that is quietly holding them back. Not because saving is wrong, but because the way most people save is a trap dressed up as financial wisdom. The trap has a name. Economists call it the liquidity illusion. And once you understand it, you will never look at your savings account the same way again. Think about the last time you got a raise or a bonus or a tax refund. Where did that money go? If you are like most people, it went into savings. A high yield savings account if you were being smart about it. And that felt good. That felt safe. That felt like progress. But here is what was actually happening in the background. While your savings balance climbed, inflation was running at somewhere between 3 and 5% per year. Your savings account was paying you somewhere between 4 and 5% in a good year. And if you did the math, your real return, the one that actually matters after inflation, was somewhere between 0 and 2%. Not zero in the way that sounds like nothing. Zero in the way that means your money barely moved. In the way that means 10 years from now, that money will buy you less than it can buy you today. Morgan Housel, author of The Psychology of Money, made this observation clearly. Saving money gives you options, but it does not give you growth. The two are not the same thing. Options are valuable, but they are not the same as wealth. So where does the trap actually come from? It comes from something behavioral economists call mental accounting, a term made famous by Nobel Prize winning economist Richard Thaler. The idea is simple but devastating. Your brain does not treat all money the same. It puts money into imaginary buckets. The money in your savings account lives in the safe bucket. The money in an investment account lives in the risky bucket. And your brain will do almost anything to avoid touching the money in the safe bucket. This is not irrational. It is deeply human. It is the same instinct that kept your ancestors from spending their stored food in winter. But in a modern financial world where inflation is constant and markets compound over decades, this ancient instinct is working against your net worth. Here's what that looks like in practice. The average American household keeps roughly 3 to 4 months of expenses in savings. That sounds like the right move. Financial advisors will tell you to have an emergency fund. That is sound advice. But research published by the Employee Benefit Research Institute found that the majority of people with savings accounts above their emergency fund threshold are not investing the excess. They are just saving more. More months of expenses sitting in accounts yielding real returns close to zero. They are not building an emergency fund. They are building a comfort fund, and the market is compounding without them. Let me put a number on this because abstract financial concepts are easy to dismiss. Imagine you save an extra $500 a month above your emergency fund. You do this for 20 years. If that money sits in a savings account at 4% annual interest, you end up with roughly $180,000. That is a meaningful sum. You feel wealthy. But if that same $500 per month had been invested in a simple index fund tracking the S&P 500, which has returned an average of roughly 10% annually over the past century, you would be looking at closer to $380,000. Not quite twice as much. More than twice as much, $200,000 left on the table, not because of a bad decision, because of a good feeling. Benjamin Graham, the man Warren Buffett called the greatest investment thinker of the 20th century, wrote about this in The Intelligent Investor. He observed that the defensive investor, the one most afraid of losing money, is often the one who loses the most in the long run. Not to market crashes, to time, to the slow, silent erosion of purchasing power, to the compound interest they chose not to collect. And this is where the savings trap gets its teeth, because the more money you accumulate in savings, the safer you feel. And the safer you feel, the less urgency you feel to do anything different. The trap is self-reinforcing. Your growing savings balance is telling your brain that you are on the right track. Meanwhile, inflation and opportunity cost are trimming your real wealth every single year. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for his work on human judgment under uncertainty, found that people feel the pain of a financial loss roughly twice as intensely as they feel the pleasure of an equivalent gain. This is called loss aversion, and it is the engine underneath the savings trap. The prospect of watching an investment account dip 10% in a market correction feels catastrophically worse than the invisible certainty of a savings account doing nothing in real terms. The threat that is visible terrifies you. The threat that is invisible does not register. Here's the counterintuitive truth that most financial content will not tell you. Your savings account is not protecting you from risk. It is protecting you from the feeling of risk. Those two things are completely different. The risk is still there. It is just wearing a different outfit. Instead of market volatility, it is called inflation. Instead of showing up as a red number on your brokerage app, it shows up as groceries costing a little more, rent creeping up, the same lifestyle requiring a little more money than it did a year ago. Slow risk does not trigger your alarm systems. Fast risk does, but slow risk can cost you far more over a lifetime. So what does getting out of the trap actually look like? It does not look like abandoning your savings account. The emergency fund is real. Having 3 to 6 months of expenses in a liquid, accessible account is not optional. It is the foundation. Without it, you are one unexpected expense away from a decision that could cost you far more than an investment return. But once the foundation is in place, every dollar above it needs a different job. It needs to be working. It needs to be compounding. It needs to be somewhere that real returns are possible. For most people, that means consistent automated investment in low-cost index funds, not stock picking, not trading, not trying to time the market, just regular systematic ownership of the market, diversified and hands-off. John Bogle, who founded Vanguard and invented the index fund as we know it, spent his career making one argument. The average investor who does nothing beats the average investor who does something, because doing something usually means doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, driven by the same emotions that keep people over-saving in the first place. There's a version of the savings trap that goes even deeper. It is the version where saving becomes identity, where the discipline of not spending becomes so wired into your self-concept that investing feels like spending, feels like giving money away. Because when you invest, the money leaves your savings account. It goes somewhere you cannot instantly access. Somewhere a number on a screen will go up and down. Somewhere things can feel uncertain. But here's the financial truth underneath all of it. The goal was never to accumulate a large number in a savings account. The goal was freedom. The goal was the ability to choose how you spend your time. And that goal requires your money to grow faster than inflation. It requires real returns. It requires the discomfort of watching a balance move up and down in exchange for the very real probability that 20 years from now, your number is not just large. It is large enough to change what your life looks like. The savings trap is not a failure of willpower. It is a success of one financial habit that stopped short of the finish line. You built the habit of putting money aside. That is genuinely hard. Most people never do it. But there is a second habit waiting on the other side of that first one, and it is the habit that actually builds wealth. You opened your savings account this morning and felt something close to pride. The number has been growing. And maybe now, for the first time, you can see clearly that growing is not the same as compounding. That safe is not the same as secure. And that the discipline you have already built is exactly enough to take the next step. The trap is not your enemy. It is a door. And now you know where it leads.